We're ready to start again. I don't need a microphone. Is it on? No, it's not. Plug it into the extension here. Okay, we're ready to start again. And we're going to have, let me tell you what the program will be this afternoon since we've had to have several changes in it. Jimmy Durham is going to return for a brief moment to enter a very important document into evidence. Peter Gordon, one of the people who's been working on this portion of the program, is going to have a brief statement. And John Walsh is going to make a presentation on the current energy bill pending in Congress in relationship to, particularly in focus with, the natural resources that exist on Indian land. And after that, Dr. Connie Uri is going to give her presentation on sterilization and its use for repression, particularly among the Northern Cheyenne, as well as describing her experiences in trying to lobby in Washington for a hospital for Indian people in Los Angeles, and what happens to the state and the mechanisms of the state when Indian people try to assert their rights. Jimmy Durham, if you'd come up, we'll enter your document into evidence. I'd like to tell people that the program is going to go for approximately no more than 2 more hours. At the conclusion, we had originally planned to give instructions to the members of the grand jury to deliberate on and to come back with recommendations or indictments. We've discussed it among the organizers of this program and with several of the members of the grand jury, who are all local people here in Washington or Maryland. And it's been decided that the grand jury will be called back, reconvened at another date in the month of May, at which time we will have copies of all the documents for everyone to look at. We'll have some recommendations that will have been prepared, and we'll be able to do those deliberations and without having to rush them because someone or several people have to leave this afternoon. So at the conclusion of that, we will not have the grand jury deliberations. That will be done subsequently and will be videotaped. Okay, Jimmy?
Thank you. I have a document that I would like to submit as evidence to the grand jury, which has been prepared for our office, for the International Indian Treaty Council office, by Winona Westgard, a Chippewa Indian woman at Harvard University. And it is a well-documented paper using AMAC's own records, using government statistics, and using our own personal knowledge of the situation on the Cheyenne and other reservations. It also includes information about the Navajo strip mining problems and the Crow Reservation also in Montana. I'm looking through it for some statistics which I would like to quote about the amount of coal that we're talking about on the reservations. But I'm not finding it. Right. All right, I will turn the document over to the grand jury and leave it to your responsibility to find the information in here.
This is Ida Gordon, who is one of the people who've been working on the Native American portion of the program, and she has a brief statement to make for the people who've been working on the program.
I wanted to speak to you because I think my testimony goes to the fact that there are conspicuous gaps within the program that we originally planned. And those gaps, if you will look on the program, relate to technical assistance and reports and information that people that are what we call the powers to be and possibly even liberal progressive forces are amassing, that are being denied to Indian people, that are being denied to the public, so that they're not be able to be in control of information, and we're not able to be in control of information to stop what's happening to Indian people. I worked with the Wounded Knee Legal Defense Committee as a press coordinator for two years in South Dakota and the various sites of the trials. And consistently, we had a press blockade. We couldn't get any information out to people. There was information that Indian people had, and they were, whenever they did get a chance, it was always a question of, where's your documentation? And the documentation is there, and it's being prepared in tomes of books, but Indian people can't get at it. And Dr. Connie Uri will be talking to you later about efforts to get information from Congress and get information to the Congress, and how Indian people are constantly stymied in that effort. Indian supporters are constantly stymied in the effort to share information because there's such a lack of press people. And there is also a lack of any effort to coordinate between the environmentalists and the legislative aides and the various other forces that are out there, all trying to get a picture of the, quote, energy crisis that we're being sold. And unless we all work together, as I think a lot of people have said, to put this in perspective and safeguard people's rights and safeguard our own sense of the kind of environment that we need to live in as human beings, that we're just going to be selling everybody down the river, including ourselves. And I guess my testimony goes as a criticism of all the technical assistants out there who are working furiously to aggrandize their own image as experts and not share it with the people. And I just wanted to make that statement because I think it had to be made here.
Our next witness will be John Walsh, who will discuss energy and resources.
My name is John Walsh. I'm a working press person. My FBI number is F748643. That's in the NCIC computer index. I'm not here, though, to discuss energy. I am here to present evidence. I'm going to bring evidence of the past and the future and of course, the present. I don't want to have to rely on hearsay. There's always a question, of course, where are your sources? When I was out in Rapid City, that was an interesting thing. Ida really didn't speak to it much in detail. The natives in this hemisphere from pole to pole have an oral tradition because they can trust each other heart to heart. Now, when people come to this town here, this town is a really interesting town in that way. This town runs on the rape of the tree people. Now, I respect the tree people. So in all these transformations, with all this kind of print on top of them, I can understand there's a certain life here. No matter how hideously distorted the decision makers in this capital have transformed their stuff. Now, Jimmy's gone through in some detail considerable background. I'm just going to go briefly through the last 400 years to cover the past part. Also, what I'm going to do, rather than discuss it, I'm going to present it as graphically, as concretely, as effectively, as meaningfully as I possibly can. Smithsonian says this bone is 400 years old. That somehow it was given birth about the time there was an energy crisis in Portugal. And Christopher Columbus was sent to India. Well, he never got to India. But he did do something interesting for the energy crisis in Portugal. He initiated slavery in 1496 when he sent a cargo of Carib tribespeople back to Portugal. Well, enough of that. This pipe is from approximately 300 years ago. It's a French trading pipe. They understand some of the natives' ways, their respect for pipe and smoke. They also thought to introduce a little technology. Enough of that. Oh, where's my bag? I forgot something, believe it or not. What's that round leather one? Oh, right, there it is. Whether Americans know it or not, we just went through a bicentennial with colonies, you know. This is 200 years old. This is the U.S. Constitution. However, Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson founded that by going up to the Iroquois to learn about democracy. They never had experienced democracy in Europe where they came from. And certainly, well, they didn't preserve too much of it after they learned the Great Law of Peace. But what they did take from it, they wrote in the Articles of Confederation, Northwest Ordinance, became embodied for white male landowners in the U.S. Constitution. Now, to make sure, I'm going to surprise you with some of these facts. And so to make sure that you understand that I'm speaking honestly, I'm going to make a pledge. And it's based on Article 6 of the Constitution, which is also, states very clearly, the law of the land. Well, so much for paper. If it's a real law, it's in your heart. It says the supreme law of the land is the Constitution equal to the treaty rights and treaty laws. It's not above them. And certainly not without them as they've been for the last 200 years, but equal to. Article 6, Section 2 says that every judge in every state, even South Dakota, ought to be guided by the treaty laws. So on the treaty laws here, on this Constitution, on the international laws, I pledge to speak as truly as I know. Let me go to the map. The energy crisis isn't new. Schlesinger isn't either. He's been working very hard for the last 4 or 5 years. The Defense Department, with AEC, that's where he learned how to get an army, with the AEC. The AEC, after LEA was developed, was used to talk to mayors and corporate managers about how to set up helicopter systems for city and things like that. And this right here, that's Wounded Knee. When there was an energy crisis in the late 1800s, there was a massacre there. Now there's a energy crisis in the late 1900s. We have here substantial evidence ahead of time. That's it. We're not reading past history. We're reading some people's attempt at future history, an attempt at another massacre. In 1973, the Great Stand of the Wounded Knee, of which this is the 4th anniversary, the government knew something we didn't. We only found it out a little while back. But one of the reasons they came on so hard, with so many troops, so much money, so much illegality, is because they knew that underneath this land right here, there's an oil field larger than the entire Alaskan slopes. This here is the 1868 Fort Laramie Treaty, the basis on which that stand was made. This person here was one of the leaders, Pedro Bissonnet. Like Crazy Horse, he was killed by the BIA. The sister here, a brave-hearted woman, that's her wedding picture inside of Wounded Knee in the independent Oglala Nation, NMA Aquash. She was murdered just a little while back. Partially because Joe Stumps was murdered. Now there's an energy crisis there. And that gets back to the media. Who is able to know what, and what are words used for anyway? The government said there was a massacre there. The government didn't say that they were landing supplies in Ellsworth Air Force Base the day before. That one of the agents shot had come in from Denver. That the FBI was landing in Rapid City Airport the 2 nights before. There's a lot they didn't say, but we know better. My brother here, Leonard Peltier, is being accused of killing the 2 FBI agents. He's an innocent warrior. I don't say that because Kohler and Williams didn't deserve to die. Everybody needs to be educated. Oh, and this is Native American Gothic. That's Dennis and Clyde and Red Cloud and another brave-hearted woman. And this is the scam over here. You see, the way it broke down with Ford and Rockefeller and ION and COINTELPRO and all the rest. Well, they knew something then, and they were organizing. Now they think they've got it ready. Now I'm going to show you what it looks like. Here's my trash bucket. Okay. Now, one little bit of past history. For instance, a source, a media worker. I often deal with things that are frightening. For instance, we have copies of 40 committee transcripts, which is the decision-making committee of the National Security Council, in which, in Kissinger's own words, he described the need to overthrow both the governments of Chile under Allende and the government of Argentina in 1976, and in their own words, in his own words, it was to take control of Antarctica, the frozen future, the krill, the natural resources. That was the Nixon version of how to deal with the energy crisis. But then the CIA didn't like him, so they sent Alexander Butterfield over to the investigators, and he sort of mentioned that there's this taping system. Now, I like tape. I'm into broadcast, and they've certainly got a load on Nixon. This is the energy bill. To establish a Department of Energy. I won't go through the whole thing, but I'll mention certain sections. The House and Senate bills are both identical, S-826 and H.R. 4263. In Section 302D and 304, this bill gives Schlesinger, as the highest authority, jurisdictions over all individually owned tribal land and all tribal lands. In 1976, the estimate of that acreage was 40.6 million tribally owned lands, 10.8 million individually owned tribal lands, and now more recently they have a new technique. In Maine, they may accumulate another 5 or 12 million by first recognizing the rights of natives so they can get the land away from the state, local industries, and municipalities, get it out of that tax base, and then exercise the federal trust relationship and take it away again. But provide federal revenue for job programs to employ the Indians in the timber mills. Okay, the second section, set of sections, 607 and 611, give build an apparatus, which career professionals in the Interior Department have told me will be a total original. Nothing like it in the last 30 years. And he used the other precedent of the Manhattan Project, which produced a notorious mushroom, almost as deadly as the nuclear family. Another section, 612 and 613, gives Schlesinger an army. I'm going to read this to you because one of the problems in doing media work is figuring out how to read some of this stuff. And I'm going to just read it to you. The Secretary is authorized to provide for participation of armed forces personnel in carrying out his functions. a member so detailed shall not be subject to direction or control by his armed force or any officer thereof, directly or indirectly, with respect to the responsibilities exercised in the position to which detailed. And it gets even more interesting. With 613, with their consent, the Secretary may, with or without reimbursement, use the services, equipment, personnel, and facilities of any organization or of any foreign government. That's why the CIA didn't like Nixon. He wouldn't cooperate with Western Europe. He wouldn't cooperate with Japan. And they couldn't manage their distribution networks in the Third World. But now they're developing the Southern Hemisphere. Indonesia. They would like to get Australia. They're working on that. The bauxite reserves, the Southern Cone, Uruguay, Argentina, Chile, and of course South Africa. The white settlers are trying to settle the Southern Hemisphere to bring energy to the Northern Hemisphere. Now this army that Schlesinger is going to be provided with is exempt from the jurisdiction of the Pentagon, exempt from the jurisdiction of the Commander-in-Chief, exempt from the Defense Department, exempt from civil service. What did I leave out? Justice Department, right, the whole thing, and is totally responsible and individually to that individual Schlesinger. It is being coordinated with Brzezinski, and there is another office. Now imagine, this is supposed to be an energy bill dealing with domestic natural resources, and yet the office with which it is being coordinated is in the State Department. And it's being worked out with police agencies and military forces in Western Europe and Japan. It's all right there in the bill. It's pretty interesting. Now, let's go to the board and find out what that means. One solid, concrete example is the Northern Plains. I put this little target up here so we can all take aim. And here they are. Mr. Energy. The focus of the Northern Plains coal will be in Gillette, Wyoming, right here. All these purple lines going in Gillette, Wyoming are water delivery routes. Oahe, West River, Madison. When they take the water in there, the coal will then be sent to many other places through pipelines. And the pipelines, we've been told, are going to be like about 100 feet high. They're going to float the coal in water and push it through the pipelines with geothermal steam. And there's going to be one pipeline, for instance, going from here to Arkansas. Another one from here to Chicago and Detroit. Also to the west, to other places. The red line there is the boundaries of the 1868 treaty land. Here is the Northern Cheyenne Reservation. Here is Colstrip, just north of it. Colstrip is a massive power plant, which with its sulfur dioxide fumes pouring down here, has brought brown lung to many Northern Cheyenne. Secretary Rogers Morton of the Interior described in detail a plan he had, his medical plan, and a working option now to be exercised by this Department of Energy is to helicopter evacuate the entire Northern Cheyenne tribe and disperse them around the nation for their own good, so they won't hurt their lungs. Now this, I'm speaking to you their own words. I'm just a messenger here. Here's the Crow. The Crow are the only natives in the inaugural parade. They have given many leases up for coal. Here? Okay. Right here, there are 5 rivers, all pouring into the Missouri. They plan on putting 42 gasification plants here to turn the coal into gas and to generate roughly 31,000 megawatts. Right now, Colstrip has been operating for a while, can only generate 2,100 megawatts. They also plan on using this to boost up, and interestingly enough, they're going to build a power plant right here in Fort Laramie. When this treaty was signed, recognizing the sovereign rights of the natives, until the waters cease to run. But then on the other hand, I guess they've got a plan for the waters, all right. Now, this is prime coal area right here. It's low sulfur bituminous. Covers northern Cheyenne, goes into Gillette. This means that when they burn it, it throws off less sulfur and generates a higher heat than this, what is called the Fort Union lignite coal formation, all through North Dakota, upper South Dakota, and this part of Montana. The Fort Union lignite formation contains approximately 210 billion tons. Montana has about 140 billion tons. Wyoming about 80 billion tons. And South Dakota only 5 billion tons. But, back to these technology freaks. In order for them to build this pipeline, the kind of which has never been built before, their technology requires a special kind of metal, found right here. This is Harney Peak, where Black Elk went to seek his vision. They plan on putting a strip mine in here to equal the Mesabi Range and transform Rapid City into the Pittsburgh of the West. Pittsburgh Pacific Mining, a little bit north, already has contracts out by Sturgis for 96 million tons of this metal called taconite iron. Also, though, interestingly enough, besides the 4 Indian killers, Black Hills also contains bauxite. Now, you know what's been happening in Jamaica, the necessity of the CIA to destabilize the government there, because until a few years ago, Jamaica had been supplying the United States with 60% of its bauxite. Until now, the United States has never produced any bauxite domestically. Until, well, their plans are to begin it in a few years here. The gunnery range